welcome to Viewpoints. I'm Chris Graham.
And I'm Crystal Graham.
November of 2015, Crystal, there was a very busy and active election cycle locally in Augusta County for the open sheriff's position. And you know, for an off-year election, Virginia has odd elections, and we know coming up in 2017, there's a governor's election. We have our local and state elections in odd-numbered years, unlike most states. And usually in those cycles, you have a hard time getting people to come out and vote. But for the Augusta County Sheriff's race, there were 4 people running, and a lot of interest locally in the future of policing and law enforcement in Augusta County. And so we had some very good candidates running, and Donald Smith, the Augusta County Sheriff, who was elected, wins the election in a good race. And we have Donald with us here today.
Right, and I think it's been a very, very busy year for him. As he got his feet wet, he'd been with the department for a number of years, but taking over as sheriff, a lot of cold cases have reemerged, and people are now, facing sentences with those. And so I think we can say that he has definitely not had it easy.
Yeah, so sometimes moving over a chair or two can be an interesting and enlightening experience. And we're going to talk with, let's welcome Donald to the show. Donald Smith, Augusta County Sheriff, welcome to Viewpoints.
Thank you for having me.
So what has this first year, this last year, been like for you, taking over the role of sheriff?
It's been very humbling. It's been a very good experience. I've enjoyed serving the community, but it's been at a 200-mile-an-hour pace. It is long days, long nights, and I spend a lot of time at work.
I imagine you had expectations. You had an idea of what you thought the job would be like. I'm curious as to how different it is, perhaps, than what you expected.
It is different. I never thought that I would be a person that cameras would follow me around. Everything that I said or didn't say right would be looked at. So it's been different for me to have all that media and all that publicity and all the rhetoric of being in the public eye. It's not something that I looked at that was going to be the way that it turned out, but I've adjusted to it as good as able as that I can. I've really tried to be in the public eye, be out there, and be very transparent to where I can tell the community what's going on. I try to get as much information out there that I possibly can.
We were talking on the drive here to the show tonight a little bit about how, you're a hometown guy. I went to school with your sister, and just, I guess one of the things we were curious about, and don't worry, we'll get into issues, but one of the things we were curious about is if you were one of those kids who always wanted to be, a policeman, a fireman, that kind of thing, or how you really landed upon this field.
I grew up farming. Grew up on the farm, beef and dairy farm, working out in the fields, and was very into the agriculture community. I got into high school and decided that I wanted to be in law enforcement, and all I wanted to do was be a state trooper. That's all I wanted to do. Wasn't able to do that because of my hearing impairment. And so I started looking and was able to get on at the sheriff's office. I actually started when I was 20 years old. I went to the police academy. I was one of the youngest deputies at the sheriff's office. Was actually able to get my car and wasn't able to drive it because I wasn't old enough to go on the county insurance. So I started at a very young age. But I went to the sheriff's office with one day knowing that I was going to run for sheriff. And that's something that I always wanted to do. I figured it out in high school that I wanted to be sheriff of the county that I grew up in. And graduated from high school, went to college at Blue Ridge, graduated from there, then went straight into the police academy, and I graduated from the police academy 3 days after I turned 21. So I started my career, and then when I decided that I was going to run for sheriff, several years out before I decided to go ahead and pull the trigger and do that, went back to school and got a degree from Liberty University. So it's something that I set my eyes on and made a goal, and I worked very hard to get where I am today.
As you were preparing to run for sheriff last year, among the priorities you laid out in your campaign was talking about cleaning up the image of the sheriff's office. Obviously, there was, at that time, and I guess still is, an ongoing investigation into some missing funds from the evidence room. Your first year, almost complete now. Talk about the efforts to sort of clean up that image with the public and get the public's confidence back in the sheriff's office.
Well, when I went into office, I told my command staff, and I was very upfront with them, that the evidence room was going to be run a certain way. And they've adjusted very well to my policies. I want the room inventory twice a year. This year, with everything as busy as it's been, taking over the transition, hiring new personnel, looking over the policy manuals, all the stuff that had to be done as I came in as the sheriff. We recently got done inventory in the room last 2 weeks ago. So I didn't get we inventoried it when I came on. When I was elected sheriff, we inventoried it then, and then I just got the second inventory done this year by my staff. So it's been, I've tried to be very open with that. The investigation, talk very candidly to you about the investigation and tell you as much as I can. The investigation is still pending. It's still with the Virginia State Police, and I'm still waiting on answers and push for answers at least monthly. I want a conclusion to the investigation probably quicker than anybody does, because I have a policy that nothing goes out of my evidence room. So when something is marked destroyed, or the court rules that we can destroy it, my policy is that nothing goes out of there until this investigation is complete. So I create more work for myself and more work for my staff by holding on to all those items, because our evidence room is huge. There's a lot of evidence in there, and it is a full-time job keeping control of that evidence room. But one of my lieutenants, he has control of it, and he does an outstanding job of checking it in, labeling it. It gets a barcode, and we constantly scan the stuff in and out and try to keep it above board as much as possible. And the reason why that I changed the policy that we would inventory it twice a year is because if something is sent to the lab, or something is out in an investigator's office, that's meaning cell phones or computers, and something that they're examining, then at least we're looking at it, okay, why is this evidence still out? And hopefully we can catch the problem. If it's not in the evidence room the first audit, then by the time the second audit runs around, it'll be flagging on our radar, okay, we've got a problem here. Where is this evidence at? Because when you deal with that, that amount of property that's in that evidence room, it's very easy to misplace something or not be able to locate something. So I've tried to put the checks and balances in there to where we can locate a problem if we have an issue.
I mentioned at the top of the show cold cases, and the fact that there seems to be an emphasis now that you're in charge on taking a look at some of the cases that maybe there weren't charges on in the past. Is that a priority for your department?
It's very much a priority for me, my command staff, the personnel that does the groundwork and does the man hours and puts the investigation, does that. I have to give credit to them, because I've set a expectation of, I want these cases looked at, but they've ultimately stepped up to the plate, and they ultimately have done the work and have kept me apprised, and we work together. It's a team effort. It's not the sheriff did this. Yes, I allocate the resources, the funding, the time, and the man hours to it, but it comes down to them. And I have surrounded myself with good people and people that are workers. I work long days, and I'm constantly working with my staff, getting woke up in the middle of the night. I'm very engaged on what goes on there at the sheriff's office, day or night. And the other thing is that I need to acknowledge is the Commonwealth Attorney. Tim Martin, he's a newly elected Commonwealth Attorney, And if I have something that I'm getting ready to pry into or I'm getting ready to look at, I call him. And day or night, I wake him up in the middle of the night just the way that I get woke up. And if I have a question, I don't hesitate on calling and waking him up. But he has a way about him. He's a hard charger like I am, so he has worked with me and given us the ability to work together, before it even goes to trial or before we even secure warrants on him.
I was going to ask about Tim. I got to know Tim a lot the last couple of years, and he's, as you mentioned, hard charging. And the fact that both of you guys are new in your positions, maybe fresh sets of eyes brought to the jobs. Lee Irvin, who had served, I think, 38 years in that position as Augusta County Commonwealth's attorney. Do you think that maybe just the fresh perspectives that you guys bring helps out in that respect?
I would have to say that. I would say Lee Irvin was very, very good at what he did. And Lee Irvin, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, I dealt with Lee Irvin for over a decade. And Lee Irvin knew that code book. He knew the law, and he was able to provide the information. But Tim Martin he's like I am. We refuse to just kind of step back and say we're not going to charge or we're not. If we have enough evidence or we're able to go and dig and push forward, I will do that, and he will too. And we work well together. And like you say, the new perspective, new set of eyes. We all got together and we pushed the extra mile, and we made the decision, we're going to get these warrants and we're going to push this case forward, and we're going to do everything we can. And we've had a lot of good success, and there's no doubt in my mind that the people that we've convicted for these crimes, they're exactly where they should be. And I sleep very well at night knowing they're where they are. Looking
back at your campaign priorities from last year, I wanted to ask about one was looking at the patrol shifts for the county sheriff's department. It's a big county. It's a county that's just about as big as the state of Rhode Island, and yet you're a sheriff's office having to patrol the county. And so you were wanting to look at ways you could marshal your resources and make sure you had the proper staffing, especially patrol staffing, on hand at any time. First year in now, how do you feel like you've been able to address that issue?
Well, it's been hard for me to tackle it because we had turnover, we had retirements, I had people that took new jobs. I've had several people that have left law enforcement altogether and got out for better paying jobs. And it's hard to recruit officers and deputies that want to do this job with the current climate that's going through the nation right now. Mm-hmm. Cops are getting killed by the day. And so it's very hard to recruit some people. And so I've had vacancies that I've had to fill. I've had people that I've had to hire and bring in. But what I've done is I haven't been able to put more people on the road, but I have on the patrol shifts. But I have moved several jobs that were inside, that were administrative positions, and that were inside the office. I have put them out on patrol. And I have put power shifts out there to where we have more deputies at our peak call times. I've moved them around. I've been in contact with several of the Board of Supervisors, and I've been very open that I'm going to push for more deputies. My staff, I will tell you, the first year has been 200 miles an hour for me, but it's been 200 miles an hour for them as well. And I push all the time to make sure that the deputies they have the best equipment, that they're outfitted, and I take my job very seriously about making sure that they go home to their families. And that's the one thing as the sheriff that I worry about the most, is making sure that the men and women that work for me, they go home. And so if it comes to the point where I have to get up out of my home, or I have to get up from behind my desk and I have to go out there myself and make sure that happens, then I'm more than willing to do that. And that's the one thing about me that I campaign to be a working sheriff, and that's exactly what I do. And I've tried to keep my word to the community as best that I could. And I'm still the same person that a year in as sheriff, I'm still the same person as I was before I was elected.
I'm a little curious. You stayed out of politics when it came to the courthouse issue that came up, and yet that's something that your department deals with, I imagine, on a pretty regular basis. What is your stance on that? I mean, some members of the Board of Supervisors would say the current situation isn't safe.
I definitely had issues with the courthouse. I definitely have concerns with the security. I definitely have problems with the way the courthouse runs on a daily basis. I've put my opinions out there to my staff and tried to get them to learn about the courthouse, learn everything, learn how I feel that it should run. But $45 million and the way that the price tag came on the courthouse, will $45 million probably be cheaper in the long run than what they do have to knock buildings down or build buildings back? I don't know. And my viewpoint on this was, I was elected to be the sheriff. I was elected to protect the people. And I, by code, have the pleasure of protecting the judges and the courthouses. So I have a staff that works very, very long hours. They work court. Court is running in Augusta County way up longer than it has, way up into the night, and longer than it ever that I've ever seen it in my career. And the court's backing up by the day. We're hopefully getting another judge very within the next year or so, and hopefully we'll be able to move the court docket along. However, I did not feel that it was in the best interest of the sheriff's office or in the best interest of the sheriff to get into the middle of the courthouse, vote yes, vote no, because at the end of the day, no matter where the courthouse is, my office has to protect it. And I took the road of, I'm not getting into the political battle. I'm not getting into the political war about this. I'm going to do what I feel is right. Do I think that we're getting to the point where we're outgrowing the courthouse? Yes. Do I think there's security issues with the courthouse? Yes. Do I even think that we should have a new courthouse? We're getting to the point where we're going to have to do something. You're going to have, but the decision for me as the sheriff to make, that was up to the people. And I felt like the people ought to make that decision, not me. So I did not push my weight around or push my opinion around as the sheriff and get in the middle of that.
Mm-hmm.
Another issue that we talked about during the campaign last year that wanted to get your thoughts on, school safety in Augusta County. And I know, again, your budget issues are what they are. The ability to replace people has been limited this first year. But your thoughts on how you can work with county school leaders, county leaders in general, to improve school safety across Augusta County?
We have a month, we have a quarterly meeting where we meet with Dr. Bond's office, his staff. We talk about security issues. We talk about new ways to secure the current schools that we have. We've also had meetings about the new schools that they're building, how we're going to upgrade the security there. We're constantly looking at new ways. But I will say that if you remember back last year when the campaign was going on, there was a big wave, and I jumped up and down that the schools in Augusta County, with the response time and all that we had going on, we needed to get the schools locked. And that was done shortly after, they started it before came in as sheriff, and it's complete now. The schools are locked, the schools monitor the entrances, and that is leaps and bounds from what we were before. Do I feel like, I would be stupid to sit here and say that we shouldn't have school resource officers in every schools, and we shouldn't, but the funding's not there. And I hope they're working on legislation now to where retired law enforcement and retired folks that are in the law enforcement community are able to carry a gun and are able to be placed in the schools. There's legislation that's going in front of the General Assembly. I don't know whether it's going to pass or not, but the children at school, on the playground, on the school bus. They're constantly on my mind. I constantly am engaged with the schools. I go into the schools myself. I take my deputies and go into the schools, interact with the kids at lunch. I campaigned to take my deputies into the schools and work out with the kids. That's something that we've talked about several times. We've never been able to get it off the ground just because of their constant schedules changing, their SOLs, everything. But we have tried to be as visible as we can in the schools, and I know that the deputies know that it is a big priority of theirs as well as it is mine, and there's probably more school checks and more deputies at the schools than there ever has been in the past. But there's only so many resources and there's only so much money. And my number one goal is to keep everybody safe, but we have to answer the 911 line, and we have to do things. And a lot of times the deputies, when they take reports and they do stuff, they'll go to they got the computers and stuff in their cars. They'll actually go to the schools and sit on the parking lot doing their reports and stuff like that. So we try to be visible and be at the schools as much as possible.
Now, you mentioned working out, and of course I'm going to mention, Chris and I used to see Donald late at night on the treadmill, and then after some shoulder surgery earlier this year, I remember some rehab there,
Yes.
slow but steady, and we don't see you anymore. And I mentioned that to someone, and they said that's because you've kind of got something where you're working with your deputies now on getting physically fit.
Yes, I put a gym in the back of the sheriff's office, probably 6 months into my tenure, and I went to the county and went to our health insurance and got money from our health insurance, and I added about $5,000 to the money that I got from the insurance company that I got from asset forfeiture that I seized from a guy selling drugs. And I put a gym in the back of the sheriff's office. And the deputies come out in the morning. I work out for 2 hours in the morning before I start my day. We meet in the morning there and work out together to build camaraderie and build their fitness level. And it lets us all be a family and de-stress together. And it really has taken off. It really has done well. I'm hoping after the first of the year, as people always make their
Resolutions, right?
resolutions that they're going to get fit and get physically fit. I hope that I'll have more participation and get more people in there. But I'm very geared toward physical fitness and deputies that are able to help one another, help the community, and be able to do. Our job is very physically demanding. We wear 30 pounds of gear, so you got to be able to hold all the gear and deal with everything that you wear, and be able to still move. And so we work out together, and it's really been a good thing. And it's something that I'm very passionate about. It's taken off within the office, but the gym there is for them. They don't have to spend a whole bunch of money paying a gym membership, and it was something that I could do for them to give back to them.
We have just a couple minutes left, and we want to give you an opportunity to talk about some of your priorities for the coming year.
Well, my number one priority for the coming year is the salaries of the men and women that work for me. The salaries are deplorable of the law enforcement community, and I have deputies that get assistance. That qualify for food stamps, and that doesn't set very well with me. I've been in Richmond. I've talked to politicians. I've talked to the legislators about changing that, and I've talked to the Board of Supervisors, and I'm doing everything that I can to make their lives and make their careers with the sheriff's office, make it to where they stay there, because the job's hard. It's getting harder by the day, and I feel like that emergency services and the people in the community, I feel like it's time that we all pull together and get behind our first responders, because they're out there nights, weekends, holidays. They're out there 365 days a year, no matter what the weather conditions are. And when people and the community run from an incident, these first responders are running towards it. So that's my number one goal, is trying to get the pay raises and get stuff for the staff on that.
Yeah, I can speak, as we're wrapping the show up here, Crystal, I can speak from some experience. Working as a member of the media, we tend to get emails from Donald in the middle of the night, and recently there was a situation in Augusta County, a murder case that came up overnight, and I'm getting email updates. Now, of course, I'm asleep, but email updates at 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. on a weekend. And so, yeah, these guys work 24/7, 365 to keep people safe, and so I can definitely buttress what Donald has to say there as far as that goes. So great opportunity to learn some insight in how the Sheriff's Office works with Sheriff Smith today.
Well, absolutely. And again, I think that issue of salary that Donald mentions is something that all the jurisdictions in this area would probably say is the same thing. We lose good people to other communities because the pay just isn't there.
That's right. Well, this show for Viewpoints will wrap up the end of our first year, 2016, as far as Viewpoints goes. So I want to thank you for joining us here on Viewpoints.
Good night.